The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tudor's Dynasty and Beyond's live chat. Today, I am joined again by Melanie Taylor and Sylvia Barbara Soberton to talk about the Wrest Park portrait. It's early here still. I haven't had enough coffee, so bear with me. Uh, Sylvia and Melanie were just on the show. The episode went out this week, Tuesday, to talk about this topic, right? Because in the last couple weeks, we've been seeing this portrait all over the place and seeing how it has been recently labeled as Lady Jane Grey. And, I think that's why we're here today, because we learned from the podcast episode that both of these lovely ladies do not believe that it's Lady Jane Grey at all, that it's somebody else. And so I would love it today if we talk about this portrait a little bit. I'm going to have the ladies kind of talk about it. And then I want you guys to ask any questions that you have or give any feedback that you may have. Kimberly, I know you look at these things and you see things that maybe other people don't. So I'm always looking forward to you being on these chats because your insight is invaluable.
I haven't
So,
looked into it too deeply, but I just have one suggestion that I sent to Sylvia.
I love it.
Oh, I
Okay.
think I know which one is this. Yeah. We will get to that.
So I'm going to first try here to share it so that everybody can see. Okay. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So this is the portrait that we're talking about that has recently been identified as Lady Jane Grey, but it's not her, is it, ladies?
I don't think it's her. No.
And
Most, yeah, as far as I can see, the one thing which the Rachel Thorogood and who doesn't actually say it is Lady Jane Grey, that's the press.
Hmm.
She's far more circumspect, but the scientific analysis has been really interesting. But nobody mentioned the similarity of the face to Lady Mary Devil.
Hmm.
this
Um,
lady.
it to me,
Yeah.
it's a younger version of her,
Hmm.
and that's by Hans
Yeah.
Ewers. And
Because
again, you
currently this painting is labeled as Lady Mary Finn's, the Baroness of
yeah.
Baker.
So
So they are trying to overturn this identification and say it is Lady Jane Grey, because there is a link with Lady Jane Grey. It was linked
Mm.
to her in the 17th century. So the link is definitely there, but
but
the
who made
evidence
that link,
really.
Sylvia?
Can you repeat that, please?
Who made the link?
Robert White in the 17th century, 1681, I think,
Okay.
when he made the engraving and he labeled it as Lady Jane Grey. Yeah, for Gilbert Burnet's History of the Reformation in England. So
Right.
the
So
link
he,
is
he's
from,
he's writing 150 plus years after
yeah,
the
exactly.
painting was
So
actually
not
done.
really contemporary um, inscription, yeah.
And slightly before it was came into the possession of Thomas de Grey, second Earl of Grey, who owns Wrest Park, or had
Hmm.
built Wrest Park.
Yeah,
So, conspiracy theories abound.
about. Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've seen some people saying, well, if this is linked to Jane Grey and if the link comes from the 17th century, then it must be credible. But I don't really agree with
No.
that because I've seen, like, I study Anne Boleyn on a daily basis almost, and I can tell you that there are a lot of portraits labeled as Anne Boleyn, and it started in the 17th century, but the portraits have no link with Anne whatsoever. So
Are you
to me, to
talking about,
suggest, it's
yeah,
not really,
are you looking at Holland's Barthologia?
yeah,
Yeah, I thought you might have been. I mean there's a lot of engravings of kings prior to Henry
yes.
the Seventh because
Hmm.
they just had no idea what William
Hmm.
or anybody else looked like, but they did know what Richard the Second looked like.
Yeah.
Which you've got Richard in your book, haven't you?
Richard II. I don't think I have him. No.
No, right, no, it's somebody
No.
else's book. Sorry about that, Sylvia, but yeah, I mean
But I
he's
think I
been
did mention him because I
you
was
did,
talking
yeah.
about. about Elizabeth I's coronation portrait and how the current earlier coronation portrait we have is of Richard II. Yeah.
That's where I've read
So,
it.
so he is in the book. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Peter left a message. Peter, are you in a place where you can't show us your face and talk?
Yes.
He said, "Don't ever believe 17th century. They're useless."
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
honestly, they're
a lot of
terrible. They're
yeah,
useless.
yeah, yeah. A lot of misidentification started in the 17th century, and we still have to grapple with that until this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
He,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead, Mel.
Rachel Thorogood was
Mhm,
using the infrared analysis.
mhm.
And when we were talking on Monday, you were saying that you didn't, the scratching out of the eyes, the nose, and the
Yeah.
mouth could all have been, and the ears could have been um, accidental. But to be
Mhm.
specific, that specific, I don't think it could. But it doesn't necessarily mean to say that it was Jane Grey.
Yeah, exactly. Like even if it was deliberate, let's say that it was deliberate, the scratching of the eyes. Um, well, I don't know if it is really Lady Jane Grey and somebody wanted to damage that portrait. I think the person would have tried
Put an axe
harder
to it.
if it was a deliberate attempt to obliterate her image. But yeah, it doesn't really mean that if somebody did it on purpose that it's Lady Jane Grey. Maybe it was somebody else, and you know, I don't think
Yeah,
we can say that with 100% certainty.
yeah. Well, in my book, if they wanted to obliterate Lady Jane Grey, you build a bonfire and you chuck it on.
Yeah,
It is, it's
exactly.
oak. It's easy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's definitely, well, I'm interested too to see. We have a lot of people in this room, and I
Mm.
know Lorraine has been interested in this as well. I don't know, Lorraine, do you have any feedback on what you think about this?
Well, I didn't think that the scratches were I thought I saw a scratch down the face, but not really the eyes, and the ears are covered by the coif anyway.
Hmm.
I didn't seem a deliberate scratching out.
I think,
I'm
I
I'm
think that,
I'm
yeah,
convinced that it's
well, I think that the resolution of the infrared photograph that the press were given is not going to be as detailed, unfortunately, so that we can actually look at it like Rachel did. I'm
Hmm.
busy now trying to be devil's advocate and having a bit of a problem. But
Yeah.
it's to me, I think it's a fascinating portrait because it's very intimate. That coif
Hmm.
is something which, no, Lorraine, they would have worn that underneath a hood, wouldn't they, or a headdress of
certainly
some sort.
would, yes.
Yeah.
So, why is this woman being painted basically in her pajamas?
I'm going to share this because I
Yeah.
just looked this up here. So this right here, I think it's
Hmm.
interesting. Look at her eyes.
Yeah.
It looks
The,
like they're moved or something, right?
yeah,
Like the position was changed, yes, of the
yeah.
eyes, of the direction she's looking. Hmm.
And also that looks like a crack in the joining of the
Yeah.
panels going
Hmm.
Yeah.
down the middle.
It does look like crack, yeah.
Ah, yeah.
I just think that's fascinating. And then we have this one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this one up here. Oh, where is it? Excuse me while I scroll through. Yeah, this.
The one, yes.
Oh,
That going to allow you to make it bigger?
no, let me see if I can make my page. Oh, what just happened?
Yeah, I tried that
Advert.
yesterday with this and it all went peculiar.
Yeah. No, I don't want to buy Levi's right now. Thank you very much. I'm just trying to see if there's one of these that I can open up that's going to show me. Well, I
There you
suppose
go.
that's the
Mhm.
best I
Slightly
can do.
better.
Yeah, and this one it's so hard to see because the whole face is really
Mhm.
dark, isn't it?
Mhm.
The one consistency is, of course, the sprig of flowers.
Yeah, the flowers,
Are you talking
yeah.
about these right here?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the portrait of Lady Mary Neville on her own without Gregory there, she
Mhm.
too is wearing one of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like
Ah,
it's like a
yeah.
common theme in her portraiture.
Yeah. and the black work,
Mm-hmm.
on the collar and
Similar.
the
Yeah.
cuffs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things, and I don't know if this was discussed because maybe I've been out of the loop, but it looks like the hand positioning was different too.
Yeah, that looks as though that's been changed.
Yeah, because it
Mm-hmm.
looks like her hand is almost like over the top, as
Yes.
in the actual portrait, when we look at it, she's holding a book.
Yes.
It's completely different. No, that she is
Oh,
holding a
she
book.
is, now that you
She's
say
holding
She
a
that.
is
book. Yeah.
holding a
Yeah.
book.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. For some reason, I saw fingers.
Yeah,
I did
because
too.
one of her finger is inside the book, so it looks like she's caught in the act of reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
It means she's pious, she's well learned, educated. Maybe it's a book of hours, who knows, or some other text. But generally, when women chose to be portrayed with books, it means that they were showing off a little bit. I am a well-learned lady, so.
Yeah.
If it
I
was Lady Jane Grey, it would be the Book of Common Prayer.
Yeah, I can see why people pointed out because Jane Grey had a reputation for being a scholar. She was very smart, very
Mm.
intelligent. She liked to learn. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily her based on this, fact alone that the sitter here is holding a book. If you look at the Mary, Baroness Dacre, the other portrait where she's sitting in front of her desk, she also has book. I think even more than one. Uh,
Yes.
so if we want to read more into those two portraits, we can say that the books, the flowers, they are constant themes in her portraiture, and also presenting herself as a grieving widow. It's another constant common theme between those portraits. Yeah, she's holding a book here.
Yeah.
And she's also, the pose is quite similar.
Yes, it is. It is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The down at that bottom corner. Oh, hello.
Sorry.
Bottom left.
Mm-hmm.
It says the Lady Jane Grey, but that hand,
Mm-hmm.
the hand, not the hands as in hands, the hand as in the writing,
Mm-hmm.
looks as though that looks as though it's an 18th century,
Yeah, it
maybe
does. Mm-hmm.
it's an 18th century hand. It's looks more copperplate than it does 16th century.
Mm-hmm.
Mel, what do you make of, and as an art historian, maybe you have some idea, what do you make of this? Her hand and her finger looking like it's in its sleeve. Does that mean anything?
Not that I'm aware of. I'd have to go back to the books of Empresi, which
Mm-hmm.
were they're all accessible actually on the Glasgow University site. Um, it almost looks as though she's got a handkerchief up her sleeve and she's pulling it out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
But
does.
has she got something hidden up her sleeve? Is it cold?
Oh,
There's, what is it that's hidden there?
Mm-hmm.
something
Yeah.
hidden up her
Yeah.
sleeve, like a
Mm.
secret.
Can you make it a bit bigger, Rebecca?
Which part?
Um, just keep going. Right now, we can't see inside the book, but I'm looking at that thumbnail. It looks grubby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking the same thing. Like it looks like it was painted,
Mm-hmm.
like nail polish.
I was thinking it looked ink stained.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that was intentional or you think that's just part of this?
Well, it's part of the showing that, she's scholarly and she's writing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yes.
well, do we see any of that in any of her other
Well,
things?
definitely. Look, she's in the act of writing something, and it was very unusual for a woman in the 16th century England to be portrayed in the act of writing because she's asserting her role as almost like as if she was a man, because men had the right to be portrayed, having this books in front of them and it's highly unusual that she's doing that. And in my book, The Secrets of the Tudor Portraits, I discuss that she's probably in the act of writing a petition, maybe, to the Queen for reinstating her son to the barony of Dacre, because
Oh,
her husband was executed in 1541.
Hmm.
And if you scroll back, up, you will see the husband's portrait on the wall. Yeah, behind.
yeah.
Look, he's like 24, I think. It's 1540, the
Yeah.
differences in the calendars, or it's either 40 or 41. He's young, and she's still depicted as a grieving widow, even though she remarried and had other children. So this is very interesting, and everything in this portrait is very symbolic because she's dressed in black, so she's obviously a widow. She has those flowers for remembrance at her
Yeah.
bodice. She's writing probably a petition. There is a clock standing there, symbolizing the passage of time. She's sitting also, and there is a portrait of her husband behind her. That's a very powerful portrait. It's one of my favorite portraits of a Tudor woman. It's so beautiful because it shows you just how much how strong you had to be, how many powerful friends at court you had to have in order to be heard. And here she is depicted in this way, very powerful way. This portrait screams, "I'm the boss."
Doesn't it just?
I love it. What do you think about this book that she's holding? So she's holding one and she's writing. Any
That's
thoughts
very
on?
interesting. Yeah, because it would be enough to be portrayed with just one book. I don't know why she holds why there are two books in the portrait. To be honest, maybe I'm having a maybe she's like maybe she was like sitting and contemplating, taking a break from writing, and maybe she was holding her book of hours and meditating from this book of hours. So that's one of the explanations, I think, quite plausible one.
How about it's a notebook?
What is this?
Or maybe it's a notebook.
It looks
That,
like it's attached. Do you see that?
yeah, that looks as though it's a bookmark of some sort.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the book on the table is her letter book, which she's copied out
Mm-hmm.
one of the petitions to the Queen, either Mary or well,
Elizabeth. Mm-hmm.
it was a 17-year passage of
Yes.
lobbying, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Because she had to try very hard to be successful in that petition, yeah.
So
But
it's
she
quite
succeeded in the
possible
end.
that
She
yeah,
succeeded, yeah.
that could be a book of letters on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I
definitely.
the fact that it's not the same, but it's a similar pose to the Wrest Park one
Mm-hmm.
suggests to
It's
me
very
that
telling, I think. Mm-hmm.
it's very telling.
Mm-hmm.
So how
Yes.
old do we think this this particular woman is?
I know that she was born around 1523. And this portrait, I think the dendrochronology dates it to between 1539 to 1541, if I'm
She'd
not
been about
wrong.
18-ish, so about the
Yes,
same
and
age
she
as
was
Jane.
about 18, yeah, when she became a widow. I think she was, yeah, about 18. And she
So
was
you can
pregnant with her third child at that time, so it was very stressful for her to lose a husband, um, become a widow, and become really just dependent on the king's whim. Because as we've talked about in the podcast episode, the execution of her husband was widely perceived as a miscarriage of justice,
yes.
because noblemen were not usually executed like that. Um, and really, people thought that he will be exonerated and forgiven. And that didn't happen. And I think that what's clear from Mary's life is that she never accepted that her husband was guilty of treason, of no, no, sorry, not treason, of he was poaching deer in the park, and he shot or stabbed somebody, and that person, the park keeper, later died. So that was the offense. And she never accepted that he was guilty, and that he should have been executed. And that's really clear from the portraits that we have of her,
Mm.
because she is all the time honoring her husband's memory. And if she thought him guilty, or if she was ashamed that she was his wife, she wouldn't have done that. So throughout her portraiture and throughout her life, we can see that she mourns for him really deeply. Yeah.
And I think we've also got to look at the fact that guilty of treason, or he was attainted.
Hmm.
The crown grabbed all of the land, and
Exactly, yeah. He
they
was a
were
wealthy man, yeah. Hmm.
extensive holdings at a time when, dare we say it, the national coffers were a bit empty.
Empty. Hmm. Yes.
Had I was going to say, had um, her husband upset the Duke of Norfolk, because, of course,
Hmm.
he'd taken over from Cromwell, hadn't he?
Yeah.
I just thought I'd bring up this portrait again.
Not the lovely Gregory.
Yeah, let's talk about this one too. And I know we talked about it on the podcast a little bit, but now that we have everybody together and we can kind of just look at it and
Hmm.
talk about it, let's talk about what we see in this portrait.
Hmm. So we see Mary, the Baroness Dacre, with her young son. She is 36 in this painting, and her son is, I think, 21. So
Ooh.
she was about 15 years old when she gave birth to him. She
Yeah.
was a teenager. She was very young, and she is standing on the right side. So she assumes the role of a male because men were usually portrayed on the right side in paintings. And this painting was painted in 1558. And it was around the time when she was successful in her petition to reinstate Gregory to the barony of Dacre. So she won. It's she won. Game over. She's basically that's it for her, and she is posing here again as a widow. She holds probably one of her late husband's rings or a signet for remembrance. So he
Yeah.
is present in the painting, even though he's not here. Um, and she's again wearing black, so she's asserting her role as a widow. The son, it's her pride and joy. And this painting is very interesting to me because it was mislabeled for a very long time. And it was said for a very long time that this lady is not Mary, but Frances Brandon, the Duchess of Suffolk. So the Lady Jane Grey's mother. And that the man here standing is her husband, Adrian Stokes.
So a
And
second
I
husband.
remember there are those old biographies of Lady Jane Grey where authors go crazy about describing this painting as, you know, Frances showing off her young husband as if he was a trophy. And that's just not true. Because first, that's not Frances, and second, she was not that much older than her husband, Adrian. I think there was just two or something like that, 2 years of difference between them in age. So
So,
not a
so what you
lot.
yeah, so what you're saying is that they're making the facts fit their theory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So now we know Susan Foister from I think from the National Portrait Gallery
Yeah.
pointed out that the year of this painting, which you have in the painting inscribed, doesn't really correspond with the ages of Frances and her husband. So she came to conclusion that those two people are not Frances and her husband. And she noticed the similarity in face between this lady and Mary Fiennes. So it's really interesting how a painting can have this long history that is inaccurate in identifying the sitters. I find it really interesting that because this painting, it served as basis to blacken Frances Grey's reputation for a very long time. And you know, it's not her, so a lot that have been inferred from this painting alone is incorrect.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
I, for,
When you say also wearing black for mourning, it's also part and parcel of the sumptuary laws, because you've got
Mhm.
the satin there, and this is
Yes.
Lorraine. I'm poaching on Lorraine's territory here, but um, that sort of level of society from which Mary is descended, which is the third Duke of Buckingham, would
Mhm.
allow her to wear that level of fabric.
mhm.
I mean, I have
I'm
to say that Gregory does look as though he does enjoy a very, very fashionable wardrobe,
Mhm.
which is
I
not cheap.
I'm glad that you brought up Lorraine because Lorraine, I would love for you, and I had muted you, so you're gonna need to unmute yourself, but I would love for you to talk about what you see here with their clothing because your background is in fashion, isn't it?
Yes, well, a lifelong study rather than any sort of, academic study. Lifelong looking at portraits. So I have so many books that sort of show her as Frances Brandon.
Hmm.
Um, just like that one with the one of Lady Jane Grey, who's actually Catherine Parr in the
Uh,
National Portrait Gallery. There's so many instances where over the years the portraits have been mislabeled. Apparently, with this one, there had been a paper on the back that had said Duchess of Suffolk. I'm sure I read that somewhere. But as for the dress, the black was very much a color for the very wealthy because of the difficulties of dyeing it.
Hmm.
The to keep the pigment, to keep the black true, and then all those wonderful aglets that are they're just for decoration rather than
Hmm.
the ends of points, uh, on all gold and jeweled.
So
Um,
where would is that black satin, Lorraine, that she's,
it looks like it.
Looks like satin, yes. Doesn't look
where
like
would
Um,
that have
velvet to
come
the
me.
from?
shine.
Yeah.
Well, sort of all sorts of silks and satins were imported. Um, I don't. I mean, there
Florence.
were silk women in England, but I think they were more making ribbons and
Decorative
things.
pieces, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Edward the Fourth had a silk woman that was making all the tassels and the ribbons. But yeah, a lot of it imported from Italy and from France. Um,
Would any have come through the Silk routes down through China, into, say,
yes,
Damascus and Aleppo?
yes, they didn't. More in the Middle Ages, I think.
Right.
Um, but there were thriving silk workshops in France and Italy.
I keep forgetting about the French.
Yeah.
Because Gregory's sleeves going down to those cuffs, I mean, is that gold embroidery on the edge of the
Yes,
cuff?
it looks
That
like
maybe, yeah.
it's a mixture of black and gold, isn't it? So
Yeah.
the gold thread, which was a core of silk, and then beaten gold wound round it.
Wow.
So very, very rich clothing.
And
And then
the
the
skill required to actually make that cuff is high, isn't it? It's, I mean, that is expensive. That's an expensive outfit.
Oh, very
yes,
much
indeed.
so.
And his gown, so that could be links,
Yeah,
comparing with
European
what,
links, yeah. I don't
yeah,
think it's
other
ermine.
portraits. And yeah, sort of seems fully lined so that you see it at the slashes.
Sylvia, is this by Ewith?
I think the current attribution is to Earth, yes.
Right,
Mm.
not the Master, the Duchess of Warwick, then.
No, I don't think so. No, it's the Earth. The current understanding is of him, but who knows? Maybe it's somebody else.
hmm.
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 Yeah, I think it's too much for, well, it's too accurate for the Master and the Duchess of Suffolk,
Yeah.
on the production of those faces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I would be inclined to think that it is Earth based on his other portraits and the amount of details in this one.
yeah.
It's quite
Peter
quite
certainly
yeah.
thinks it's Ewith. He's just made a comment in the chat.
I saw that.
It's labeled Youth in the National Portrait Gallery, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's a fabulous painting.
Mm-hmm.
I do see the similarities, definitely, when we look when we look at this one and then we look at the other ones. I tried to do side by side before, but I'm not sure that you guys can see it very well on smaller screen. I have this big monitor, so I can see so much, but I don't know. Can you guys see them okay when I do the side by side?
I just see one
Oh,
painting.
so
Just
At the
the
moment,
big
it's
one.
just one.
well, never
Yeah.
mind then. It won't let me do it. Here before I was putting them side by side and you couldn't even see them. Technology. See, even I
Yeah.
sometimes struggle with it. I am curious if there's anybody else right now before we keep going who has any questions or any feedback or anything that they would like to share. Kimberly, do you have anything you want
Yeah.
to say?
The only discrepancy I think I see is she has a cleft chin. If you compare the two.
Mhm.
She's
But
actually quite pudgy as well by then, isn't she?
yeah. So I don't, it could be the artist's preference or hers that the presumed Lady Jane Grey has the
Doesn't
cleft
have
chin
it.
too.
Mhm.
Um, but, and then I was also going to ask, what is the Edward VI portrait that has the cargo mark? Do we, that could help us maybe date depending on
Oh,
what age
you
he
know who they
is?
would buy? They would buy William Scrott's. Um, but it was
Because
Sylvia.
I was kind of
Yeah.
looking on English Heritage to see if they showed the portrait of him, but
No, they didn't, did they?
uh-uh.
Mm-mm.
So
No,
it's like, is it a young portrait of him? Is he older towards his death, or because that
Uh,
kind of
but
I
narrows
don't
William.
think.
the date for
I think they
me.
did not say. I think they just said that it's similar or the same as in King Edward VI portrait, but I don't think that they said which one.
Sylvia, how many did Scrott's paint of William, Edward rather?
Quite a lot.
Okay, there's
I
several
can't
in
tell you
Paris.
the exact number, but there are several
Yeah.
of Edward. He was he died as a teenager, but there are a lot of portraits of him. So we have pretty good idea of what he looked like. If I return to the subject of Lady Jane Grey's appearance, we don't really know what she looked like because we don't have a description of her look, and we don't also have any the portrait that we would say this is definitely her and compare this portrait to the Wrest Park portrait and say, oh, she resembles Lady Jane Grey, because several years ago there was this description where it says that it was by the eyewitness and she apparently had red hair and freckles, but this is not a contemporary description. In her book, Leander Delisle proved that it was a hoax, actually. So, again, something that we thought was real and true about Lady Jane Grey turned out to be a red herring.
She's
So it
just a
would be,
mystery.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would
What
be
about
really
the
helpful.
Yale?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the Yale miniature? Because that's been attributed as being
Yeah,
Lady
it's
Jane
been
Grey.
also interpreted as Lady Jane Grey, but to my understanding, it doesn't really have the links with Lady Jane Grey. And I'm really not a fan of um, identifying women, because the sitter in the Yale miniature is 17 years old. So
Yeah.
that's where, the art historians who identify it as Jane Grey say, oh, well, she's 17, Lady Jane Grey was 17, so that's that. But I think we have to have some more than just this, than just the
I.
age.
Yeah. I've suggested it's Amy Robsart.
Yeah, I've seen that suggestion as well, that it may be Amy Rapsart, but I wasn't doing much research on that particular miniature, so I can't tell you. I don't think it's Lady Jane Grey.
No.
If it has ties to Amy Rapsart, I would like to know. I'm going to Google it later.
Uh. Yeah. You and
Um,
I need to have a chat about that off screen.
okay.
Well, we have a question that came in from Jason, and Jason says, I wonder if any of the flowers in the sprig in the rest portrait have been identified, and if so, would these help identify the sitter or their circumstances?
Mhm. Yeah, so the flowers are violets and they are for remembrance. And the flowers refer to her widowhood and to the fact that she is trying to commemorate her late husband.
Yeah, can we go, Rebecca, can we go to the one where it's just Lady Mary and the
She's
portrait
also
of her
wearing,
husband
yes,
behind her?
yeah,
Yes.
If you go on that one, you've also got dandelions, which are also
yeah.
for remembrance, les dandelions.
Mhm.
Um, Hilliard uses those in his cap of his self-portrait. And you've also got the pansy in there, the
Yeah, pansy,
pensée
yeah.
to remember and to think. And I need to, where is this portrait, by the way, Sylvia?
In the Royal Museum of Ottawa,
Ontario?
Ontario,
Yeah.
somewhere
Oh,
in Canada, I think. Yeah, it's
right.
not in the
Okay.
UK, definitely not. Mm-mm.
Now, I'd like to see a really high resolution area so you could plow down
I will
into
send you.
that.
I have one. Yeah,
You've
I will
got
send
one.
you.
Oh,
Hmm.
right. But
Is
it's,
is it contemporary? Like, have they dated it? I just, whenever I look
Uh,
at this, I feel like it
yeah,
kind
I
of
think
reminds
they
me
are
of
dating it
Victorian
to,
because
yeah.
of the wallpaper. It's not
Hmm.
wallpaper, but it reminds me of like Victorian wallpaper in the back.
I think they are dating it to around 1559, but I'm not aware if they did the dendrochronology on it. I would have to
um,
double check that.
and that
Um,
would be a woven hanging, wouldn't it?
They hung it on
yeah.
tapestry, over tapestry.
Yep.
There's one of Elizabeth first when she was young, and there's a most beautiful tapestry that's full of fruit and flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
That, of course, just all speaks Tudor, isn't it? With the
Yes.
Lancastrian rose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to ask about, of course, now I stopped sharing. We'll go back here. I was going to ask about the red flowers in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Rose of Lancaster.
Mm-hmm. It could be interpreted as such, yeah.
Mm,
What else could it be interpreted as?
Um, I don't know. I think the most convincing explanation to me personally is that it is the red Lancaster rose because she is trying to refer to her lineage. Um, but it could be just anything decorative, perhaps, as well.
Hmm.
Um, you know, in general, everything in the painting, if you look at this painting, everything about it has its meaning, and nothing really is accidental. So I would say that the Lancastrian red rose is the most likely explanation here. Yeah.
There's just
And
so
also,
much going on.
yeah, the curtain behind her, which is, if you like, drawn back to
Mm-hmm.
show, it has at some point or other been across her husband's portrait and that woven tapestry. So you
Mm-hmm.
could almost say that it's a relief. Admittedly, the portraits were hidden behind curtains to
Mm-hmm.
protect them
Yeah.
when they were hung.
Hmm.
But the fact it's black, it almost takes on a political statement about her lineage more than it does about her dead husband, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which oh, it could get very knotty there. Anyway, the subject is the Wrest Park portrait rather than Lady Mary Neville, which
But
is
Lady Mary Neville is she's absolutely irresistible as a
yeah.
subject to study and to talk.
And the
And
background here.
yeah. And you know what? I think that if you tell the public that this is Lady Jane Grey, then I think many people will believe.
Oh, of course they will.
And of course, Lady Jane Grey will draw much more crowds than Lady Mary, because she's just Lady Mary is just she's less known,
Hmm.
but she's no less fascinating. And I think if more people knew her story, they would be drawn to her character.
Is that your next book?
No, but I have a chapter in the book, in The Secrets of the Tudor Portraits,
Excellent.
where I discuss her and the case of mistaken identity. Basically, it's about the double portrait of Mary and Gregory and how it was used to besmirch basically Frances Grey's reputation as this evil wife who displays her young husband as a trophy. I can't get over this description. It's
I
so.
mean, if
I
I
mean,
had
yeah.
if I had a young husband, I would show him off too.
Yeah, if he was as attractive as Gregory, you would.
Yeah, but he wasn't that much younger than Francis.
You're
No.
no, but I
Yeah, no,
would. But I
talking.
would.
Yeah, down, Rebecca, down.
I mean, who wouldn't, right?
I mean, good for me. Good for me.
Good for you.
Yeah, but I've just realised this is the only portrait I've ever seen with a black background.
hmm Yeah, it's interesting.
Oh.
Either blue or grey or bluey grey or bluey
hmm
green, but
Is it
never black. So
it,
is that a degradation of varnish? Which I don't think it
hmm
is because it's been cleaned and
hmm
looked at.
Can
So
I
that
just
again
have
is
a
another
word?
deliberate statement of mourning.
oh,
Yeah,
did I
yes.
hear Ian have something to say here?
Yeah,
hmm
I mean, accepting that I know very little about all this symbolism and interpretation, um, going back to the alleged Jane Grey
hmm
and the blackened thumbnail,
hmm
which people seem to feel is ink and therefore indicative of the fact that she's educated and writes. Is she actually left-handed?
Oh,
Good point.
interesting. So, now I'm wondering, in
Mm.
other portraits where women or men are holding a book, are they always holding it in their left hand? Just out of
Um,
curiosity.
I would have to look because I don't remember from memory.
Because I'm a lefty, and to think if
Oh.
I were to hold a book, I would hold it in my left hand like that, because
hmm
that's where I feel the sturdiest. I could hold it here for a long period of time.
Well,
hmm
I'm a righty as opposed to a lefty, and I usually hold my books in the left hand.
Oh,
Um, but I write and get ink, being very old-fashioned, on my right hand.
which makes sense.
Right, so just thought I'd throw that in.
I love it. Thank you, Ian. That's very insightful. I'm glad you thought about that.
And Lady Mary's holding it in her left hand.
Mm.
hmm
Well, that's
What is
I'm
she
with
that's
writing
a
in
Ian.
with
lot of
the
silence.
Yeah, no, I'm with it. I'm with Ian because I get my hands covered in ink, but it's always it's the one
what
I write with.
in the other portrait? What hand is she holding the quill in?
Let's see this one.
If Rebecca
Oh,
can.
there you go. Good point. Right
Yeah.
hand.
Right hand, yes.
Hmm. I feel like we're all just sitting thinking about this now, aren't we?
Yeah.
We are
Let's take a moment of silence and just think about this and process what we
just
just.
taking it all in.
I think it's really interesting, though, Ian. I'm glad that you pointed that out because that would give another reason. But it appears, unless she's ambidextrous, that she's right-handed.
Well,
Mhm.
yes, Lady Mary definitely is.
Yes,
This
Lady
letter
Mary.
that yeah, Q put up a tweet yesterday which had the letter from Jane Grey to Thomas Seymour, which they said was written to him when he was in the Tower. I'll come back to that in a minute, Rebecca.
I knew you were going
But
to do this to
is there,
me.
yeah, I'm going to throw you under the bus. But is there any way of recognizing whether somebody's left-handed or right-handed from the way they write?
Oh, I think there is.
Mhm. I think
Depending
there
on
is.
the
Yeah.
slant. I mean, as a lefty who was raised with all right-handed people, I worked really hard not to have the left-handed slant. I didn't
Mhm.
want people to know that my writing was from a lefty. So I tend to turn my hand in a certain way so that I don't have that back tilt that most, I suppose, if you're looking at it, it's going to be the other way.
Mhm.
Right. We need a handwriting expert.
Yeah.
Who knows one of those?
Yeah. Anyway, back to the letter about Jane Grey. Do
Mhm.
you think it was written to Thomas when he was in the tower, Rebecca?
No, no, I don't. It's always been my understanding from my research that she wrote that to him after he had released her to her parents after Catherine Parr died. And that was like her letter to him saying, you know, you were a great father, blah, blah, blah. As far as I understand, when he was locked up in the tower, he was pretty depressed that the people that were important to him weren't reaching out to him. And he basically just had his lawyer friend was the one that was keeping in communication with him. Other than that, there really isn't any evidence of him receiving letters while he was in the tower. Not that I found.
I
Mhm.
just found it curious that that letter surfaced on Twitter with the Q attribution to it being when Tom was in the tower and it being from Lady Jane Grey at the same time as the whole thing, the Wrest portrait
Mhm.
attribution to Jane Grey hit the press.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that letter has always been dated to 1548, which doesn't match. I mean, unless we're looking at the calendar in their time, but everybody
Yeah,
seems to use the modern calendar now, right? So if it were 1548, well, he wasn't arrested until January 1549.
in
Mhm.
modern dating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the plot thickens. So is this a modern conspiracy that to up the interest in the Wrest Park portrait?
Well, you know how I feel about, I think we talked about this in the podcast where I said it all just seemed like a little too obvious as a marketing ploy to get people to come to
Money.
the, yeah. Hey guys, check this out. We got this portrait. We think it might be Lady Jane Grey, and we have some other ones that are coming too, and it's going to be this wonderful collection. Come see them.
Yeah.
Cynic.
I mean, it's smart. It's a smart marketing tactic to get people to come to your place, right? And I'm sure there's an entrance fee and all of those things. I don't want it to detract from what they're doing by any means. I'd like to poke fun at it a little bit because I saw right through it immediately.
Yeah, I think Lady Jane Grey will draw much more crowds than Mary Fiennes. So yeah, I know I would be interested in what Jane Grey looked like. And when I saw this, info popping up in the news, I was like, wait a second. I know this portrait is not Lady Jane Grey.
Right?
Because in my mind, I associated this portrait with Mary. Um, so I think there are good arguments to be made in favor of this painting representing Mary rather than Lady Jane Grey. Um, yeah, but as many things in portraiture and art history, a lot is about interpretation. So I would say gather as much info as you can and make opinion based on that. To me, there's just so much to suggest that this is Mary and not Lady Jane Grey. So to me, it's Mary. I'll stick to that. And I'll wait until a portrait of real Lady Jane Grey resurfaces at some point because I am a firm believer that there is a painting of Lady Jane Grey somewhere. If not a full-scale painting, then perhaps a miniature. I think a miniature is much more uh, likely. Um, but who knows, we have a miniature of her sister and several full-length portraits based on that, Catherine Grey. Um, so I don't think it's impossible that Lady Jane Grey was portrayed and that there was a miniature of her at some point in time. We know that I think it was in 1566, the inventory of Bess of Hardwick, there was a painting of Lady Jane Grey recorded. So at some point in history, the trace grows cold, and we are left with nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a firm believer, and I think that one day we will find out.
There are so many boxes in the attics of these old
Oh,
houses.
there are.
Boxes, not to mention the thousands of boxes at Kew, which are totally uncatalogued.
Mhm.
But I don't think there's enough hours in the century left to get
No.
into those. I but you can stumble on these things. I
You
know
can
that
stumble,
Ian
and
stumbles.
yeah, and great discoveries are usually made when you stumble upon something just
Yeah,
accidentally. You're looking for something unrelated, something else, and then wow, something pops up, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
this is great.
Ian's nodding sagely.
Something like about Anne Boleyn, Sylvia.
Yes, about Anne Boleyn. Yeah, I found something very interesting about one of the Boleyn women. I can't say which one. But you will learn about this soon enough. But I'm telling you, I was looking for something else, not even related, and this popped out in my search. So there are a lot of documents waiting to be discovered. Some of them, most of them, are in the archives.
Mm.
Yeah. So you just have to know where to look and look really closely.
Not necessarily in this country, isn't that right, Sylvia?
Yeah. Outside of the UK as well. Yeah, outside of the UK as well. Yeah, if you're looking, for example, at women who had links with other countries, so for example, Anne Boleyn, then yeah, you can find some other information in the archives, like let's say in France. Um, or a lot of documents from Henry VIII's reign ended up from outside of the UK, and also a lot of paintings because let's say the Mary Fiennes is in Canada. She emigrated there. Um, but there is also a drawing of a lady from the Tudor court, from Henry VIII's court, and she's drawn by Hans Holbein. And it's in the Pushkin Museum in Moscow for some
Yeah.
reason.
Huh.
So uh, it makes you really wonder how many paintings are out there somewhere, either in private collections or just waiting to be discovered, sitting somewhere, or even in private collections but not labeled. Because if they are not labeled, you don't know that you're looking, let's say, at Anne Boleyn or some other great lady, important lady. So yeah,
And
there's a lot of a lot of things to be unpacked.
yeah, I mean, one of the, I think also these great houses that have been in a family literally for centuries, they walk past these paintings and not see them.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of the Gentileschi that was found in Windsor
Hmm.
during lockdown. I think
Mm.
it's a Susanna and the Elders.
Mm.
I mean that's been there for a very long time, and
Yeah,
it just jumped up out of nowhere.
exactly. Isn't it mind-blowing?
Yeah.
They just need to let some of us into these old homes and walk
Oh,
through for a
they
few
definitely.
hours.
Mm. Yeah.
Hmm.
I would be happy to be in somebody's old, musty, dusty attic, searching through boxes for weeks on end. That would be my happy place.
Hang on a minute. You've been to Powderham.
Yeah, they didn't let me in the attic.
You've seen the stuff on the walls.
Yes, yes, that's true. I mean, I would love to be able to have access to something like that. Maybe that's what I should ask the Earl next time I'm there, huh?
Yeah, you can
Mhm.
catalogue some of those dusty old boxes up in the attic.
Yeah, I'll just offer my free service. I'll be like, I'll do it for free. You don't even have to pay me.
Just let me be here.
Give me a cot to sleep on. I'll be fine. Well, we've been at this now for almost an hour, and I want to make sure that if anybody else has any feedback or any questions or anything that they would like to discuss, I mean, please feel free to speak up because this has been a really fun chat today.
I have to say, Peter's been incredibly quiet.
He left. He had to leave. He sent that in the messages, so
Oh,
he
I missed that.
apologized.
I would just say that my theory, and again, I haven't really dug into this, was that maybe it could be Margaret Tudor, Henry VIII's sister, just because I found a portrait where she's dressed very similarly.
Mhm.
Um, and then the only thing that I looked into was, I guess, Margaret Tudor stayed with uh, the Dacre family for a period of time after she was booted out of Scotland. So that could be a possible connection. Um, But yeah, I would really love to see the x-ray of the portrait to see. I know they're always really blurry, to see if you can find any like I don't know, jewels or anything that stands out like that.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I don't
so
know
it's
if
Okay.
you
interesting
see
there,
it.
yeah. Because the Margaret
Oh.
Tudor in the
Or,
painting where she's depicted as a widow, she's also wearing this coif and a quite similar clothing to the Mary Finns.
yeah.
Um, but I would have to like dig really deep into that Mary Tudor painting because I haven't to see like when does it date? When was it painted? Was it posthumous? Was it during Margaret's lifetime? Is it a copy of a painting or, there are a lot of questions to be answered here. But the suggestion is interesting. And, I wonder if what we see in the Lady Jane Grey / Mary Finn's portrait, the Wrest Park portrait, is it something that a widow in that period would customarily wear? Was it something that every widow of a baron of a nobleman would wear? So that's one of the questions that I have, and yeah, I'm going to definitely delve into that Margaret Tudor painting because I'm fascinated myself because I think that we don't really have a lot of contemporary paintings of Margaret Tudor, despite her being Queen of Scotland and Henry VIII's elder sister.
And they kind
Yeah.
of have
I think.
kind of similar histories
Mm.
where they both lost their husbands in kind of tragic situations. They both had um, sons that they really adored. I mean, Margaret didn't get to spend much time, I don't think, with James V, but um,
Yeah, definitely similar
but
circumstance.
when I saw that she had stayed with the Dacre family, I think there's like two lines of the family,
Hmm.
um, where Thomas, Mary Fine's husband, might have been part of an illegitimate line, but again, I'm not sure. I haven't delved too deep into it.
Hmm.
Would have
But
thought that Margaret Tudor would have been too old
Hmm.
by then.
mhm.
Also, black, it wasn't necessarily for widows, it was just a highly fashionable color, and because it was so expensive to achieve.
Hmm.
Status.
Thank you,
Rebecca, I
Sylvia.
posted this link here so that you can just open it and see. Yeah.
Thank you. I was looking for it. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't find it, and it won't let me zoom in. So this is as close as I
Uh-huh.
can get on it.
That's the painting, and I think Kimberly's has very good eye to link those portraits together,
Mhm.
because the
Yeah.
clothing is so similar.
Yeah.
The other
So
thing is,
very
it
Especially,
similar.
strikes me that that is typically Flemish.
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's supposed to be Albany with her. It's in a private Scottish collection, unfortunately,
Mhm.
so I don't know how.
I don't think I've ever seen a colored version of this painting. I think I've only seen it in black and white.
I did find a colored
Oh,
uh, version of it. I can send it to you. I should have saved it.
Hmm.
oh.
Um, but she does have like coppery hair in the colored version.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, I wish I could zoom in because it does look like she's got the same
Flowers, yeah,
flowers.
and she has something there,
Yeah.
like maybe a coat of arms or something, yeah,
Yeah.
below the flowers.
yeah, and then the man standing behind her, I think, is in
Some livery.
servant. Yeah, Henry VIII's livery.
Hmm.
Because I think it says HR, but
Hmm.
oh, where is
Oh, what a
it? There
fun
we
one. There's
go.
so much to unpack from this one too. We could spend another hour just talking about this
Just
one.
Yeah,
about
I
this
mean,
one.
this is yeah. The only thing
Um,
is the dates because the dendrochronology on the Wrest Park is in fact from
this is a
much
color,
later in the century when Margaret was no more.
this is a
So that
colored
could be a
version
close
of
Aha, the
possibility.
colored version. Oh, I see it.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. If you could send it to me over Substack, where we
it.
talked before, that would be great. Great. I would like to see it on my computer like properly.
Kimberly, that's a fabulous portrait. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always. You never know. Like whenever Kimberly is in these chats, you never know what she's going to pull out for us. I love it.
It's my
Yeah,
passion.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Well, it's fun. I think we all really enjoy looking at these paintings and these portraits and trying to figure things. It's like solving a mystery.
It
Yeah.
is.
It's a lot of fun. Well, does anybody else have any other questions or anything that they would like to say? I want to be mindful of your days. So we're here. We're here if there's anything else you want to throw at us. Not me, because I won't be able to answer it. Unless you want to talk about Thomas Seymour, but that's a completely different
Oh.
live chat.
I guess, Melanie,
I'm
are you really knowledgeable with like kind of 15th century portraiture by chance, or like symbolism, or any of you?
Certainly symbolism. I've done a lot of research into humanist symbolism, so 17 years of it. So
Okay.
message me. Kimberly,
All right.
message me. Because,
I'm working on
yeah.
a triptych right now,
Are
and I'm
you?
not, yeah, another one. I'm just not quite sure what all of the symbols mean or could mean. Some
Yeah,
hand
no,
gestures and
let's have that chat
okay.
elsewhere.
Is your
That would be fabulous.
email on your website, I'm assuming, or
Yeah, melanie.v.taylor@gmail.com.
okay.
So yeah, I've done a lot of unknown sitters. I'm Ian has lived through several of my unknown sitters.
I saw him raise his eyebrows.
This triptych is full of unknown sitters. So
Right. Okay. Do you happen to know whether it's Italian or European?
Flemish.
Flemish.
The the miracles of Christ, and it's
There's an
said
awful
to
lot of
be
them. And
yeah.
miracles as well as triptychs.
And another issue is it's attributed to several different artists.
Yeah.
The Legend of Saint Catherine, the Master of the Princely Portraits.
Yeah.
It's a doozy.
Brilliant. Okay, I look forward to yeah, maybe we could do yeah, you never know. Maybe we can do a chat like this and get other people to do it. But let's have that chat anyway. It'd be great, Kimberly. It'd be fabulous.
I love this. I love this, you guys. This is my favorite part of doing these when collaboration comes out of them. I'm like, that's what we're all about, isn't it? You can't research history by yourself. I mean, you can,
Yeah. Oh
but
no, it's teamwork. I mean, Lorraine's knowledge of fashion is absolutely amazing, and it's these collars which do that and frame the face, as opposed to the wheels and the ruffs, which make people look as though they've had their head chopped off and they're being served up on a plate. Which, I mean, the surrealists actually do that with photography in the 1920s as well. They had this whole thing about heads that seem to be disembodied, which
Floating heads.
yeah.
why.
And Ian, for those who weren't here at the beginning, you have a book that's coming out, and why don't you tell everybody what your book is about and what your specialty is in research?
Right, okay, right, fine. Here we go. Quick splurge. It's an accidental discovery, as was mentioned before. I was doing my doctoral research and I was looking for a particular letter from George III, basically to see what his son was up to in New York. And I turned to the wrong page in the book, where I saw a letter from the king granting a royal pardon for Midshipman John Michel, who had just been convicted of attempting to murder the first lieutenant of his ship. And I just thought, that looks a bit more interesting. Why on earth would he want to do that? Why? I mean, he was granted the pardon on the grounds of his insanity, which, as we know, ran in the family of the Hanoverians. So I think there might have been a sympathy there. But when I started to research it, I suddenly found that this guy had never been brought up by his own parents, that he was always going through a series of carers, and that there was a personage, and I put that in quotes, who had his well-being at heart. And then I dug further and I suddenly found that he'd been sent to a naval academy in Chelsea, where mysteriously there had been a fire,
Hmm.
and he left very shortly afterwards, only to be given a few years later a commission into a regiment, a royal regiment, the Royal Scots Greys, from which he was actually dismissed on the grounds of insanity. Um, because when it was discussed what could be done with this lad, whose parentage was rather suspect, it was suggested that he was sent into the army. And at the same time, they said, well, we couldn't possibly have anyone mad running the army, could we? Which rather gave the lie to a lot of the senior officers at that time. And the grounds for his insanity, he used to talk to his horse, which when it was first reported, they said, well, that's perfectly normal. We all talk to our mounts, don't we? Yes, but apparently his mount contradicts him as well. So he will give an order and his horse will say to him, I don't think so. I really don't think so. The final straw was when he was found in the turnip store, uh, slashing as many turnips as he possibly could with his saber. And when he was caught at it, they turned round and he said, yes, but I've won the battle against the turnips, haven't I? Next thing we know, he's dismissed from there or retired, and he's still only 20. And in a couple of weeks' time, he suddenly finds himself as a midshipman in the Navy, which he never wanted to be in the first place. And that's why he devised the scheme, so that they would have to get him out of the Navy, preferably by executing him. And
This
that's
is just
how he claims he took control of his life. But it doesn't quite end there.
There's
I could
so
put
much more,
dot,
isn't there?
dot after that.
Well,
But
would you say your background is naval history?
no, I'm what's called a serial careerist. I started off as a page boy and then a steward in the Merchant Navy. I very quickly found I wasn't born to serve, so I became a rock and roll singer. I mean,
What?
it's obvious, it's an obvious move to make, isn't it? So I worked in London's Tin Pan Alley and did various things, basically. Then I got away from that, and then I don't know, what did I do then? Oh God, I went into social work. That was right. Then I was employed by the International Red Cross. And then I became a lecturer in marketing and, stuff. I mean, I do what seemed like a good idea at the time. I then found myself approaching what most people regard as retirement age, but I couldn't really face that. So I turned my hobby of reading about Hornblower and all the Patrick O'Brien books. I thought, well, okay, let's do this properly. So I then got my master's from Greenwich University as the oldest student on the campus, and suddenly found myself to be a maritime historian. So now I'm a maritime historian, I'm a writer, and I'm a public speaker, and an entertainer. There you are. So
Thank you.
that's me. Now you go out and tell thousands of people to buy the book because I need the money a lot more than Amazon do.
Yes. I intend to have you on the show as a guest once I get through your book.
Okay.
So look forward to that very much.
Yep, I will.
Yeah.
I will.
And I tell you what, Rebecca, the next time that you're in the UK, we're all going to go and have lunch, aren't
Okay.
we?
This will be a very long and liquidly fulfilling session.
Well, it sounds lovely. And hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully it'll be this fall or autumn that I will come visit you all. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And
Excellent.
I really want to thank everybody for showing up today because this was really a fun chat. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Barbara. Everybody who's here. Kimberly, of course. Thank you for everything. And I hope to do more of these live chats. Maybe I'll be doing one a month. I haven't quite decided yet, but I've really been enjoying this myself too. It's just fun to get on and chat with other like-minded people, right? 'Cause sometimes this is very lonely. You know, a lot of this we do by ourselves. And when we get the opportunity to collaborate or to talk with other people who are interested in the things that we're interested in, I think it's a big deal. And I feel like not to change this too much, but I feel like mental health has been a big topic lately on social media in particular. And for me, I mean, those who know me well know that I've had my own mental health struggles, and that's not easy to say, but I thank this community for being here for me and for allowing me to do what I'm passionate about. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have history. I don't want to just say the Tudors because it's not just the Tudors, but just history in general and all of you lovely people. So I'm grateful today. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, thank
Well,
you.
we're grateful to have you, that's for sure.
Yep.
I'm
I
a
think
stay-at-home mom, so I am grateful for the adult conversations and can definitely relate. I suffered really bad postpartum,
Mm.
and when I discovered like all these history podcasts and like Tudor's Dynasty, Talking
Mhm.
Tudors, I mean, all of them, it really pulled me out of my depression. So thank
Good.
you.
Oh, I love to hear that. I'm happy we can all be here for one another in whatever way is possible. So
did
thank
they
you.
say teamwork makes the dream work?
That's just my phrase. I say that all the time.
Yeah.
And it's
Yes.
I think it's great to have, people with other disciplines as well, because now we know who we are and we can put faces to names. We can actually now not be quite so shy. Not that I'm shy, um, but I am. And sort of say, hi, I need help. Can you, and particularly with Lorraine, she's been brilliant. Um, there's another unknown sitter which is also making the news, which is, dare I mention, the Wadlow portrait.
Oh, here we
Um,
go.
yeah, unfortunately, it's not available in the US, but there's a Netflix documentary on it in the UK, released on Friday. And I've yet to see it because I haven't got Netflix. But that one's an interesting one as well. So
Yeah, I would like, have they said anything about if it's going to be available in the US?
yeah, the company that is marketing it in the US is Blue Ant, which is a Canadian company. But of course, the big thing is if this is proved to be a portrait of William Shakespeare painted when he was alive, it's estimated at being worth between 100 and 200 million.
Wow.
So, whilst I know the Americans are not very keen on Shakespeare, really, but I'm sure that the commercial value might sort of tweak the odd interest somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. That's
Yeah.
exciting. Well, hopefully
I've
we'll
been
find
involved
out.
with this one for almost as long as I've known you, actually, Rebecca.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll be having an episode on that coming up soon too, so that even if it's not shown in the US, at least we can talk about it so that I mean, most of my listeners are from the US, and I think people are always surprised to learn that, but it's over 60% of my listeners and viewers are from the
Well,
US.
I certainly know from the guys behind the documentary that, anything to broaden the knowledge of the Wadlow would be great. So that would be fantastic.
Yes, yes. Well, I don't
And
want to
people
keep
look,
you. Sorry.
that's right.
I was just gonna say I don't want to keep you all because we've been at it for a while now, but Thank you so much, you guys, for joining us today on this chat. And I look forward to the next one. So stay tuned for that. And that concludes another episode of the Tudors Dynasty podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you love the show and would like to show your support, consider becoming a patron over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Tudors Dynasty. Over there, you'll get commercial-free episodes, early access, and some patron-exclusive content as well. If you would prefer to show your support in another way, head on over to my website, tudorsdynasty.com, and click on the shop to see some of the new merchandise that I have available. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.